I can't let this case go, and way more needs to be said about this Washington State Trooper, Sarah Clasen, who, on her way home from a bar, struck and killed a 20-year-old motorcyclist. She knew she was drunk, she knew she shouldn't have got behind the wheel of a car, and yet she drove anyway. Both Sarah and her husband Trent had been drinking at this bar for over 4 hours before the crash happened. When they left in separate cars. Sarah went to go pick up a pizza to save a $6 delivery charge, and her husband Trent went home. Both of them were drinking, both of them were drunk, neither of them should have been driving that night. After Sarah left the pizza place, she was turning left into her subdivision, and that's when she struck and killed 20-year-old Joser Vega Sanchez. That's the debris and what remains from the accident, as Joser lay dying, while the one who killed him stood around with her buddies, laughing and joking. Sarah Clasen was a 13-year veteran of the Washington State Patrol, and there were two agencies that were working that wreck that night: the Washington State Patrol and the Richland Police Department. It wouldn't be till 6 months later that she was finally charged with vehicular homicide, which she pleaded innocent to, and she remains out of jail without bail and on paid leave from her job pending trial. Now remember, this accident happened on March 1st, 2025, and it's already mid-November, almost December. She's been on paid administrative leave for almost 9 months. But I want to point out something to you that I didn't cover in my last video. It says for about 30 minutes, it was not clear who would take control of the investigation because the State Patrol normally handles collisions on state highways and interstates. Richland Police officially took charge of this case about 8:15 p.m. It says in most cases, the troopers had minimal contact with Clasen before they ended up being sent to another fatal crash near Benton City. But one WSP sergeant remained on the scene with Clasen until Richland Police Detective Steve Hyde arrived at 9:15 p.m. Before Hyde arrived, that's Hyde from the Richland Police Department, Clasen asked twice if she could go home. Both times, Richland Police told her she needed to stay. That's before Detective Hyde arrived on the scene. Initial comments by WSP troopers indicated officers didn't suspect Clasen was drunk. Do you think the troopers would have suspected that you were drunk? Why, with all the troopers present, could nobody detect that Clasen was clearly under the influence of alcohol? The smell was there. The signs were there. Some people say there was a bottle in the car. But for some reason, the troopers turned a blind eye to the clearly inebriated state of their fellow female buddy in blue. And we'll get to her actual on-the-scene blood alcohol content in a minute. So her fellow troopers claim they didn't suspect she was drunk, but Hyde, who's the detective for Richland Police, became suspicious when he noticed a faint smell of alcohol, a slight glossiness to her eyes, and a number of spelling errors in her written statement. When he asked her to take the breath test, she refused. Under state law, that meant she had to be arrested while he applied for a search warrant for a sample of her blood, which leads us to the next thing. It seems like both Richland Police and the Washington State Patrol drugged their feet to such a ridiculous extent that her blood wasn't even drawn until over 6 hours after the accident. At that point, they said the blood test showed her blood alcohol level at the hospital was 0.17, just over twice the legal limit. But here's the thing. It takes time for blood alcohol concentration to go down. It says with the average rate of decline being about 0.015% per hour. There's no way to speed up the process, as only the liver can metabolize alcohol. Activities like drinking coffee or taking a cold shower do not reduce your blood alcohol content. All that can lower it is the passage of time. So if the blood alcohol declines at 0.015% per hour and they waited over 6 hours to draw the initial blood for the blood test, that means in that 6 hours where her fellow thin blue line buddies were dragging their feet, her blood alcohol content dropped 0.09%. If you take the 0.09% and add it to the 0.17%, you've got 0.26%, which means at the time of the crash, she was over 3 times the legal limit, which tells you all you need to know about what they were doing in this bar for over 4 hours. They were drinking like fish. But we're not done with the story yet. Trooper Clasen worked a morning shift on March 1st. After work that afternoon, she met her husband Trent Clasen, a former WSP trooper, at a Richland bar. Now you might wonder, what did Trooper Clasen's day consist of early on March 1st? Well, she says to Munder, who's one of the WSP officers on the scene, that she'd had a good work day. She'd stopped 12 cars, including someone who had been driving drunk. And she says, quote, "I was like, 12 cars and a DUI isn't a bad day." Well, it was a bad day, and the last day for Mr. Sanchez, and a very sad day for his family. All because this hypocritical puke decided to get behind the wheel of a car after drinking like a fish. One of Clasen's colleagues, Munder, arrived at 8:04 p.m. about the same time that Vega Sanchez was taken to Cadlick Hospital. After an initial conversation with Clasen, Munder called back his supervisor and another investigator and updated them and said there was, quote, "nothing criminal about the wreck. You don't think Munder knew that Clasen was drunk? Quote, still trying to get a hold of a tech. Just talked to Trooper Brian Mulvaney and he said, well, if it's a conflict of interest, I'm like, well, there's nothing really criminal." So Munder was laying cover for Clasen. And then get this, at 8:15, Munder told a Richland police sergeant at the scene that the WSP could help with the investigation, wink, wink, but the Richland officer said they could handle it. "We can do everything," Munder suggested. "It just depends on what we're thinking about here. Of course, she is a trooper. She's actually in our crew." "We have the detectives coming," said Munder. "We can do everything, but maybe just not the whole thing. We can do everything, but maybe just for impartial reasons. I don't know if your boss would go with that." And this was a good move and maybe a moment of conscience for this Richland sergeant who said that he wanted to bring back the Richland officers who initially were sent to Benton City to handle the crash involving Clasen. The Richland sergeant told Munder, "Then you can go handle that one near Benton City. That way you don't have to worry about it." Munder agreed, though he remained at the site for the next 40 minutes, including when Clasen's husband, her drunk husband Trent, arrived. That's another issue. At 8:26 p.m., Munder was the first to ask Sarah Clasen about her husband, a former WSP sergeant who retired in 2018. Sarah Clasen asked Munder if it was all right if Trent Clasen came to the scene in an inebriated state, adding Trent was reluctant to just show up. About 5 minutes later, she said her husband was coming, though she admitted to Munder he was drinking at home. Well, if he was drinking at home, and he had already been drinking at the bar until 7:30, so he was already soused as soused could be, then he's probably going to arrive on the scene in a drunken stupor. Munder answered, "Hopefully he's not driving. He doesn't need to be driving." And I'm convinced that the only reason Munder said this is because he knew that he was on body cam. But we're going to find out that that didn't really matter. So Trooper Sarah Clasen says to Trooper Munder, "Oh, he's not drunk, but he's like, I had a couple drinks. I was like, you can bring me a jacket, I'm pretty sure." So get this, drunk Trooper Sarah Clasen, who just killed a man at this intersection right here, tells a trooper that she wants her drunk husband Trent to come to the crash site to give her a jacket because she's cold. Oh, she's cold, all right, but it's going to take way more than a jacket to warm that cold heart. But we're not done yet. While they were waiting for Trent Clasen to arrive, Trooper Munder gave her a coat and what appeared to be a sports drink. Then Trent Clasen arrived and spoke with Munder. Now Munder knows Trent has been drinking. Munder knows Trent is drunk. who was the only trooper still there. Munder told him that Richland police would be investigating. During their conversation, Trent told Munder, "Take care of her. Take care of her, Munder." So Trooper Sarah Clasen is drunk. Former Trooper Trent Clasen is drunk. The troopers know Sarah and Trent are drunk. And now the Richland police know that Trent just arrived drunk. But nothing's going to happen to Trent. And nothing has happened to Sarah. The prosecutor recommended no bail. The judge agreed. She's been on paid administrative leave for nearly 9 months. Her driving privileges have not been revoked. No alcohol ignition interlock device was required. There were no travel restrictions. And to date, Sarah Clasen has suffered no consequences while she's getting paid. Meanwhile, this kid is dead. Many in the Thin Blue Line gang tried to cover up the crime. Everybody knows that what Sarah did should put her away for 30 years. And this drunk, psychopathic Thin Blue Line monster is still out there living her best life on the tax cattle dime. And the way our injustice system works, she probably won't see 1 second behind bars. Leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you want to help this channel out, you can do it for free. Just like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon. But you got to remember, the government is that psychopathic, parasitic, violent, thieving, criminal gang that you were afraid would take over in the absence of government. I'll see you in the next video.